And so if there's a panel that has a long history of agreeing with the government on everything, SEC's chances go up. They could be a 70, 80% chance that they're going to win. If it's a more of an average type of situation or more favorable to Ripple, then Ripple's chances go up. If you were to ask me, all right, let's just say it's a fairly divided panel or an average justice, I think the odds are much more in favor of Ripple, 70-30 probably in their favor, that everything stays the exact same.
This content is brought to you by VeChain, which is a leading enterprise-grade Layer 1 public blockchain spearheading a digital revolution from a sustainable, highly scalable smart contract platform. The VeChain blockchain has many unique features, which makes it an ideal choice for Web3 applications. VeChain is working with many great enterprises such as PwC, Givenchy, BMW, and Walmart China. Most recently, they partnered with the Boston Consulting Group to build a revolutionary decentralized application ecosystem. I'm a big believer in this project. I have been since 2018. I've been a VET token holder for years. And this blockchain is highly scalable, great with security and speed, and it has low energy consumption. If you'd like to learn more about VeChain, please visit vchain.org. Link will be in the description. Welcome into the Thinking Crypto podcast. I'm your host, Tony Edward, and with me is attorney Fred Rispoli, who's the founder of HODL Law. Fred, great to see you.
It is a pleasure to be back, Tony.
Fred, absolutely want to get your expertise and your POV on the SEC appealing the Ripple case ruling by Judge Torres. Let's start with, what is your initial thoughts on what took place? Were you anticipating this appeal, or was it 50-50 for you?
Well, I was hoping that it wasn't going to happen, but hope is never the best strategy. I had been on X saying, at the end of the day, I thought it was going to be 60-40 in favor of an appeal. There's a lot of risks for the SEC, obviously, and for Ripple too, and I know we'll get into it. But at the end of the day, every institution in America, in my opinion, not just the SEC, is just getting more and more political. And rarely does any institution now have any accountability. So there wasn't too much of a downside in that sense for the SEC to file this appeal. Now, granted, it could be catastrophic for them if they lose, but even if that's the case, there's no accountability anyway. So it seemed like everything was starting to point in that direction, especially once there was the deal to put the $125 million fine in an escrow account. That's the kind of thing you usually do when you're setting up an appeal.
That makes sense. And on to your point of, the SEC and the way they're acting, no accountability, many times breaking the law. They don't even seem to care about the law. To your point, this seems to be a symptom of big government. You have a lot of these agencies going rogue, and I don't know how we solve that. I don't know what the solution is. There has been ebbs and flows throughout the history of our government, but also throughout the history of the world, and things go bad sometimes. Sometimes they're great. But how do we fix this? What are your thoughts on that?
Geez, I know we only have so much time, so I'm going to give you the overview. But I'm a big studier of history, and no empire lasts forever. They always crumble at some point, and we have it very good in the US, too good. I was, just a quick example. I have some friends that had recently come over here from a very poor African country. And they were talking an example of it blew them away that we have these animal rights groups in the US. Because where he was from, he would just say, we're so far behind on human rights that it's just not even on anybody's radar to give animals rights at all in any way, shape, or form. People are getting unjustly prisoned, executed, and whatnot. And so, he's just it just blew him away. And so when you get to a place where you have so many good things going for you, you just kind of get complacent. You start arguing over every little thing. People start taking power, and it's inevitably how it goes. If everybody woke up and was like, I mean, personally, I think the easiest thing is if everybody voted against the incumbent, whoever the incumbent was on any given election, and you said, nope, I'm just voting for the opposite, that would send a message. But that seems to be wishful thinking.
Mm. So, Fred, why do you think the SEC appealed this ruling? Is it because they want more money, or they want more than 125 million, or they really want to uh, get rid of Judge Torres's ruling on the secondary market sales and so forth?
Yes. So the answer is they're going to appeal everything they lost, and some of their arguments are going to be a little bit better received than others. In terms of the merits, so just dialing it back a little bit, people were a little confused. They see the notice of appeal just of the August 7th, 24 order, and they're thinking, is this remedies only? No. That order references the summary judgment motion. So really, they can appeal anything that was discussed in the summary judgment motion
Mm.
and ruling there, which is a lot. Now, I think the only thing they're really going to do is programmatic sales and other distributions. Remember, there were three categories. The other distribution was gifts, grants of XRP. That's a little bit of a smaller issue, but still important. The programmatic sales is where it's critically important. And there's a little bit of a nuance in that the summary judgment opinion did not talk about secondary sales in the sense of you and I buying and selling from each other on Coinbase. It was explicitly excluded in the opinion, but in a way it wasn't because the programmatic sales for Ripple is just Ripple selling on an exchange. So it's a little bit removed, but you could easily make the argument, well, if what's really the difference between Ripple selling XRP and Tony selling XRP to me on an exchange? And so that's why the SEC wants to take it out, is because that argument can be used for the secondary sales as everybody kind of thinks about it, which is me, you, anybody else selling it. Which is why I thought maybe they wouldn't appeal, because that was distinguishable enough to say, hey, that was only for Ripple, that wasn't for everybody. But they want to roll the dice. They're also gonna, I mean, I'm assuming they are going to also appeal the money.
Mhm.
They're going to try and get the Second Circuit to maybe change their more recent opinion about no disgorgement if there's no losses, and they're going to try and get a higher fine. I don't think that's going to go their way. So really, the only thing that's the most dangerous for XRP holders is what's going to happen on this programmatic sales. And not just XRP holders, but going to be bad for Coinbase, going to be bad for Kraken. If the SEC triumphs in the Second Circuit, as soon as they win, they're filing that case in the Coinbase case, and the Kraken case, and the Binance case, and they're going to try and use that, going forward. So that's kind of everything that's out there for the appeal.
Mm. What do you think their chances are of winning this respective appeal? And obviously, we don't have the full details, but as you mentioned, if it's regarding the programmatic sales and so forth, what do you think their chances are of winning that?
So the sad part about their chances, and the sad part about maybe the way our judicial system is structured in general, is it's really the probabilities are really going to hinge on who are the three judges that get assigned that case for discussing it and for writing an opinion. I don't know. I'm in California. I'm in the Ninth Circuit, and there are, I mean, maybe I should know this, maybe 40 to 60 judges. I mean, there's a lot out here, and three get assigned to my case, to a case when I'm in the Ninth Circuit. There's probably 24 in the Second Circuit, if not more, maybe less. But in any event, whatever three judges get picked, we call that the panel, and you could have an okay panel, you could have an amazing panel, or you could have a terrible panel.
Mm.
And so if there's a panel that has a long history of agreeing with the government on everything, SEC's chances go up. They could be a 70, 80% chance that they're going to win. If it's a more of an average type of situation or more favorable to Ripple, then Ripple's chances go up. If you were to ask me, all right, let's just say it's a fairly divided panel or an average justice, I think the odds are much more in favor of Ripple, 70-30 probably in their favor, that everything stays the exact same in terms of Judge Torres's order getting affirmed. And if Ripple can pull a really good panel, they might even get what they lost overturned because Ripple will cross appeal. I know there's comment that Stu Alderati said they're, quote, considering it, but I think they'd be foolish not to cross appeal and put everything in front of it because, again, the judges in a lot of situations could also come down to, well, this was a split the baby decision, and we'll continue to let the baby be split. And so we'll deny Ripple's cross appeal. And deny is not the right word. We'll reject, that's not the right word either. We will consider both sides of appeals, and we will say we are not agreeing with Ripple that Judge Torres should be overturned on institutional sales, and we are not going to agree with the SEC that Judge Torres should be overturned on the programmatic sales and other distributions. And so her ruling will remain, is what I would say is the 70-30 likelihood.
Mm. Now, as far as timeline, is this thing going to go for another 1 to 2 years? What are we looking at here?
It would be very odd if we get a ruling from the Second Circuit before January of 2026. So not 5, 6.
Wow.
And the reason is, and I put a post on this yesterday, the way the timeline works out with the briefing, the SEC is going to get 30 days. They'll probably take their automatic extension of another 30. So we got an opening brief coming out probably in December. Then there'll be a opposition, and that will probably also, Ripple will also probably take the extension. That'll put it out to February or March for theirs. The reply briefs will be done end of March. Oral argument will be scheduled. They usually wait 4 months or 5 months after that to schedule the oral argument. And if the SEC says, hey, we've got conflicts, they'll push it out even more. So I don't think that's going to happen until the fall of 25, the oral argument. And then judges, the Second Circuit usually sits on a case once it's been submitted and done with oral argument for anywhere from 6 months to a year. So, we're talking, that's why you go from the fall of 25 from the oral argument, you're in the early part, Q1, Q2 of 2026. So you get a decision, and a lot can happen in between now and then. And so that's really the best bet, is to push forward on the legislative front.
Wow.
And yeah, real quickly, the good news is that from now until then, until that 2026 timeframe, Judge Torres's order is what is the law. And so everybody can be comfortable following that. And, institutions that want to use XRP, they have that safety. And if things go bad for Ripple in 2026, those institutions aren't going to be punished for what they did when it was still okay under Judge Torres's rule, if everything goes bad. But on the other hand, do these financial institutions, when they make multi-year plans, are they going to say, we might as well just wait until, this appeal wraps up? And that is going to be the key critical factor for Ripple and its success going forward, is can they convince their clients and these institutions that no matter what happens with the appeal, they've changed the business practices, the landscape has changed, we'll have a new political regime, whether a continuation or not of the current regime. And it just depends on, are they going to be able as a business to make those sales and connect with those clients and do that convincing necessary? This appeal shouldn't stand as too much of an obstacle because it's kind of baked in now. Everybody in the crypto world knows the SEC's hostile.
Yeah.
So if Ripple's not going to make it, it's starting to be more of a business model issue than I think the SEC issue. SEC doesn't help, but the SEC is no longer just targeting Ripple. They're targeting everybody.
Yeah, great point. And this is very different from 2020 because no one saw the lawsuit coming in 2020. Now we know the lawsuit's been going on. Ripple won a big part of that case, and like you said, the entire industry is in legal battles right now. Everybody's getting Wells notices on lawsuits. The biggest agencies, excuse me, the biggest exchanges are involved in lawsuits with the SEC. So I was speaking to some folks about this that it doesn't have the same impact like it did in 2020, where everyone was like, whoa, okay, there's this fear in the market, it's legit fear because no one saw this coming. You know, what's going to happen next? But now it's like, okay, you're appealing, but the law of the land is Judge Torres's ruling. However, there's a lot of people who want to know, and I don't know how much you can tell us about this because we're not in the ETF business, but Bitwise filed for an XRP ETF. Would the SEC block it based on the appeal, or do they have to let it through because Judge Torres's ruling is the law of the land?
Well, there's no good reason to deny it. However, when you are dealing with an agency that has zero accountability and is very political, and it's not just the SEC, we're in the crypto world, so we see it, but all of these agencies are like this. When I sue the government for other issues, when in my personal injury practice, it's all over the place the way this is operating now, like a Rube Goldberg machine. But the there's obviously some very hurt feelings, and people are taking it very personal in the SEC, this whole Ripple matter, the fact that they have, I mean, this is one of their only losses. Although
Mm.
we had Ripple, Grayscale almost close to each other that felt like we were on a roll. There's been a lot of losses, granted at the procedural level, in the Coinbase and in the Kraken cases. Those aren't final losses. Those are just kind of initial losses that they want to fight this thing. So while that XRP application goes through, there's just so many chances for delay. I mean, anybody who's watching, think about going to get maybe an addition put on your house or some type of zoning variance that you have to go through the government. And that they might not even know who you are. Imagine the delays they can do if they don't like you.
Mm.
So I think it's going to be a long haul for the XRP ETF because I think there's going to be a lot of delays, but you do have that ruling that says XRP in itself isn't a security from Judge Torres. So I think this will have to go the Grayscale Bitcoin ETF route, where is Bitwise or is there going to be a consortium of ETF applicants that say, all right, we got this denied, let's sue them and go from there. I thought that was going to have to happen with Ethereum too. One
Mm.
day we'll know exactly what happened behind the scenes where that ETF just went through at the very last second, weirdly. But I don't think that's going to happen with XRP, at least with this regime. Again, everything could change if there is a new regime come January 2025. And even I've told this to other people, Gary Gensler is almost assuredly not going to be the chair, no matter who wins the presidency.
Mm.
If Kamala Harris wins, he is going up and he's getting the call up and he's going to go. And that could be worse for crypto. I mean, maybe it's better that they're out of their hair, but he's going to be moving on. So who's going to be in there next is going to be a key factor.
Yeah, great point. Uh, do you think if Congress is able to pass regulations, like there's talk about getting the Fit 21 bill out of the Senate by the end of the year in the lame duck session? I don't know if that's going to happen, but let's say it does happen in 2025. It goes up to President Trump or President Harris, and becomes law. And let's say that law, obviously gives some clarity in the industry about altcoins. Would the SEC's appeal be thrown out?
It would if it's clear, crystal clear with the legislation. So let's say the legislation is passed, at the end of this year and it goes into effect January 1, 2025. Well, then the Ripple attorneys would file a notice of supplemental authority to the Second Circuit, and they would say, hey, this law just passed. This is how it applies to this case. This is case ending. The only thing now in front of the court is anything that it's going to address looking backwards. So Ripple could still get punished. Programmatic sales, say, the court could say, the court could still come out with a ruling saying we reverse Judge Torres on programmatic sales. Those were investment contracts at the time. However, as of January 1, 2025, through this legislation from Congress, they no longer are. So this only pertains to everything that happened in the past. And so that's how that would play out.
Hmm. Wow. A lot of things hang in the balance here with this election and even these bills making it through the Senate.
Yeah,
Pretty
and
crazy.
even without a bill being passed,
Hmm.
there's always the appellate courts always love it when cases settle without them having to do anything. So at any given time, the SEC and Ripple could get together and say, all right, let's agree to these terms that we're both happy with, or at least not going to continually hate each other for the end of time with, a good compromise. And they could withdraw the case from appellate consideration. That's always a possibility too. I don't think that happens a lot, but again, now that everything is so political, there's a much higher chance that something like that could happen if there's a significant regime change at the SEC.
And I think you may have addressed this, but I want to make sure I'm clear on my end. So let's say Trump wins, right? And we know he's like, I'm going to fire Gary day one. I'm going to help bring clarity to the industry and so forth. Um, so let's say Trump gets into office. He appoints a Republican chair. Maybe it's Hester Peirce. I don't know. Can that chair say, hey, let's drop all this stuff. This is nonsense. And let's start working with Congress to get things through? Is that an option as well?
Yeah. Now, I mean, it is a little debatable about how easy he could fire Gary, demote him at least to not being chair anymore. But I think he could, and I think you could get him out on a couple different ways. I think Gary would probably want to go as well and not be
Okay.
in that situation. But if you had a new regime, again, like you mentioned at the commission, and you've got at least three members that are going to say, okay, the way we did this was ridiculous. Let's be realistic, pragmatic, and act in a way that's going to foster American innovation instead of push it outside of the shores. Then they could just hold a vote and say, we're voting to withdraw our appeal. They don't even have to settle anything with Ripple. They could just completely withdraw it, and that would be the end of it. And so that's always possible. I don't know how much that's ever happened. I should ask. I know there's a couple of people that you've talked to before that are a little bit more deep into SEC history than I am. So I don't know if that's ever happened where they've just completely changed face like that. But this is a situation where it would. I mean, it's a new technology, a new paradigm. And so it's certainly possible. And you've got the two commissioners, Ueda and Pierce, who are very anti what the other three commissioners are doing, and that's pretty noticeable and pretty marked. So it's certainly possible that you got a change in the 3-2 balance. They have the authority at least to say, this appeal's over, we fold.
You know what's interesting, Fred? I don't know if you saw the hearing with the SEC and the House Financial Services Committee. There was definitely that clear political divide because we know Mark Ueda and Hester Peirce are Republican, Crenshaw, Gensler, and I forgot the other guy's name, are Democrats. There's a clear divide. However, when the question was asked, are you in favor of Congress passing updated rules and regulations? We got yes from everybody, even the Democratic commission, except Gary Gensler. uh, and that was so telling. So it seems the other folks are, even if they're Democrat, are like, yeah, we want Congress to weigh in here to give us some clarity. But Gensler has to keep that false narrative, right? That there is clarity. Howie, right? It's pathetic, and hopefully we get someone new there. That
Yeah, Gary's got his marching orders, and what you can at least say favorable to him, there's two things I'd say favorable to him is he's a master troll, which I appreciate. He is perfect at trolling. He's great at it, and you just can't take that away from the guy. And then two, he's very loyal to whoever is going to be making sure he's taken care of. And so there is somebody, and I know a lot of people think it's Senator Warren and her staff and all of that, which is why, real quick plug, go John Deaton, baby. But
yeah.
it's why, he is very loyal to whoever's giving him the marching orders to just be absolutely against crypto in every way, shape, or form. And, if things change and the winds change and he realizes he's going to, I mean, if someone said, we'll give you Treasury Secretary, but now you have to be the biggest crypto fanboy there is, I mean, he would be the biggest crypto fanboy there is. And everybody who's not in the crypto world would be like, oh, he's not so bad. He's a good crypto guy. And we'd all have to just hold our noses and be like, if you only understood and knew what we went through the last 40 years. But I mean, that's a very realistic possibility.
Mm. Yeah, I guess, from Gary's position, he has nothing to lose. He's already a multimillionaire. He's been in the Wall Street circles. To your point, someone's giving him the marching orders. He's probably going to get promoted. I look back at his history with MF Global when he was at the CFTC. No punishment, no accountability. But years later, here's the SEC chairman job, right? It's just a matter of time. He keeps getting promoted and keeps getting these government jobs. So he doesn't seem to be worried at all. He'll cause as much chaos and then leave and then go get another amazing job in government.
He is not worried in the slightest. And again, I just stress that the people who are watching this are much more crypto focused and see the both government ineptitude and government corruption on the SEC side of it. And again, there's a lot of other people who I think are trying to are understand, hey, there's a lot of this fraud that does go on in the crypto world. I mean, I'll be honest, I think 90% of tokens are either useless and or scams. But the problem is that the SEC is just not going about it in a good faith way. There's obviously players who are trying to do it the right way, and there's no way to do it the right way. And so that's why everybody is so much against them. But I mean, this is happening at all levels of government, especially on the federal level. If you're not paying attention because you're not into owning land and being a rancher, you don't really know what's going on with the U.S. Department of Agriculture or the Interior,
Hmm.
um, or what's happening with U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I mean, it is just like there are so many Supreme Court cases coming out across the board saying you don't have authority to do this. This is unconstitutional. You can't just make up a rule like this. And it's just sad because we're going fast enough now where we're heading towards a breakdown, and it seems like it's going to be real tough to pull ourselves out of it, which is why the good news is have your crypto, have your backup plan, and you're good. People were waking up to zero account balances at Bank of America. If
Hmm.
you have your cold wallet and you're all ready to go, or cold storage on the hardware wallet, you're all ready to go. You have at least that background or that backup safety.
Yeah, absolutely. Fred, I've asked you this question in the past, but I know people are gonna because they're very upset, right? Many XRP holders, the SEC is doing this to them again. Um, is there any action that individual investors can take against a government agency?
Yes, it's just hard to win. And I think there's chances. There's a chance, and that's what the class action. It's not a class action yet, but John Deaton that's the 75,000 people that have signed up. He could choose to file a case against the SEC. It's difficult because you have to show that they went outside the bounds of what their government jobs were. And there's certainly some arguments to make that happened, especially as the revolving door has become a little more grotesque and more easily able to be discovered through civil discovery, for example. But that happened in the Madoff case where everybody that got screwed by Madoff sued the SEC, and they lost on the grounds that the SEC was immune, and the opinion was scathing. The judges, and I want to say it was the Second Circuit, but they said the SEC was incompetent, imbecilic, derelict in their duties, but they were just bad at their jobs. They didn't go outside of the range where they could be liable, civilly liable for that. And so case closed. So there's a chance, but it's a difficult one. Although I wouldn't want anybody else leading that charge other than Mr. Deaton himself. So it's to be determined.
Yeah. Well, I for one would vote to have that done. And I know John's busy right now. Let's have him unseat Elizabeth Warren first, and then maybe, well, then if he becomes a senator, it's going to be hard for him to maybe be involved in this. So,
No,
I,
it would he could if that happens, we'd have a lot of good things to worry about or good things and a lot of bad things we don't have to worry about. And I'm sure he could pass that torch on. And it would be great because there's a lot of things that would help out that case that he'd be able to help on as a senator, not even to help out the case specifically, but just to root out corruption and add transparency in the SEC. If everything in a government investigation started coming out about all these horrible things that were done, then it would make that lawsuit a lot easier.
Hmm. All right, Fred, the last item here, because I know you've been working on this on behalf of Songbird token holders or those who haven't got their Songbird from Coinbase. What's the latest there?
Well, we've got a big hearing coming up in the Ninth Circuit next week. That's October 8th. I'll put something on my X handle about that, and I'll also link. You can watch it live. I know some people watched me live when I was going against the SEC in the Ninth Circuit in July, and I, again, really appreciate that, anybody who tuned in. But this one, that was more of a moral attempt to get the SEC to do the right thing. This is, comes down to people's money and the songbird that was stolen by Coinbase. We're battling on a motion to compel arbitration. So if we can get the arbitration ruling reversed and we get back into court, then everybody can participate in the class action. It'll be a lot easier and a lot more likely that we can force Coinbase to have an accounting of the wrongs that they treated all XRP holders, that had put their XRP on the exchange to get Songbird tokens. So that's October 8th. I'll drop a link so people can watch it and hopefully you tune in. And I like to have my phone with me while we're up there so I can see what people on Twitter are telling me, get legal advice in real time.
Well, I'll definitely be tuning in. And do you think Coinbase sold all the Songbird that was distributed to them, and now they're scrambling like, oh, we don't have it, but they don't want to pay out either?
I feel, yeah, I'm pretty sure they got rid of it at the top. I don't have that 100% confirmed, but I'm pretty sure. And, great windfall for them.
Fred, thank you so much, man. I appreciate your insights and your knowledge, and we'll have to have you back on soon, maybe after your hearing and so forth, and touch base on or when the SEC puts out their respective details on what they're appealing and all that. We can touch base again.
Anytime, I would love to do it.